Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Barbarian and this is a CK3 FAQ analysis video, and this format is changing. More on that in a second. And this video wasn't actually scheduled to go live today. I wasn't meaning to record this until, maybe Friday, maybe Saturday, because there was a tweet, however, I decided to reschedule, and this is what we're going to do first. Let's talk about this. Announcing our 7th Discord live Q&A with the Crusader Kings III devs. Join us on Discord Wednesday, 1st of July, 11:30 AM CEST. That means in about, 15 hours, there will be a Q&A in the official CK3 Discord. You can see the invite right here. Just follow this. Link will probably also be in the description. Join that and ask your questions. I'm highlighting this because it is very important to me that we get questions that are as good as possible. I mentioned this earlier in one of the other analysis videos where I essentially said the questions aren't always the best these days, and if you have anything that is good, leave them in the comments. And if you will be around for tomorrow, which is Canada Day, by the way, happy Canada Day if you're watching this on the 1st of July, but if you are around at 11:30 AM CEST, check out the comment section, see if you can't find any comments on the topics of decisions, events, audio, what else is there, stress, and of course feudal contracts. Yeah, that's all of them. Oh, we had 5 developer diaries. That's quite a chunk. But any of those topics will be the topic of the next Q&A session, meaning that we need questions to those topics. If you have any, but you won't be there tomorrow, then leave them in the comments. And if you will be there, check out the comments. Maybe you will see a question that interests you as well, and we can get that answered. So, first of all, this video goes live today, mostly because I want some more, good questions in the Q&A. But beyond that, I also do want to say, since this format is changing, let's talk about the format. And by the way, if you don't care about the future of the format, if you just care about the FAQ part, that is fair, absolutely fair. Go check out the timestamps. I will, as always, timestamp every single part of this video that is separate. Even more intricate, I think, and granular than I usually do. Now, the way this will change is, first of all, you can see a camera. I am experimenting with the channel. I am doing a lot of different things. I'm learning to edit to a larger degree. I'm now having access to Premiere Pro, and it's amazing in comparison to Vegas Pro 15. Who could have thought that a 5-year-old program is worse than a, 2020 program? But with that being said, I'm experimenting. I can't tell you whether the camera is here to stay. If you don't like it, that is very, very fair. I have seen, angles that were yes, that were no, perfectly fine. I'm just experimenting. I hope that's okay with you. But for the more sort of final sort of thing, I will be cutting this format in half, meaning that the comment review will get into its own format and the FAQ thing will get into, or will remain in this format. Let's say it like this. So this entire video and every video going forward that is an actual FAQ analysis video will just be an FAQ analysis. I will still love to read all of your comments, so please feel free to leave them. Give me any input that you have. All of that input is very, very interesting to me. But the comment reviews, I'm still thinking how we're going to do this. I'm not entirely certain. I originally, of course, wanted to keep it included in this particular format, meaning that I would only have like the top 10 comments or something. And then I said to myself, there's like 50 comments that I want in these videos. I can't cut it down to 10. That's way too much. So what I'm going to do instead is there's going to be its own video, probably on the weekend. But I'm also thinking, let me know what you think about this particular idea. I'm also thinking about doing the comment review as a live stream thing on the weekend. So we can do a weekly comment review where we just talk about the most interesting comments in regards to CK3 until CK3 comes out. At that point, I mean, that's sort of a null and void. But I like the idea. I like the ping pong. I like the conversation that we got going on in this community. And I would love to keep it alive. So feel free to comment. I will read all of those. I will save those on my hard drive. I will cherish them. And then we can look over them together. Now, before I actually jump into the CK3 analysis, I just want to say, if you recognize this face from PDXCon 2019 and you say, wait a minute, I had a drink with this guy, for example, the day or the night before PDXCon when we were in the bar with Wiz, and you say, hey, I saw that guy, but he had shorter hair, that's me. But if you recognize me, then definitely go back, follow me on Twitter. I will refollow you, of course. I already reconnected with a couple of people that I met at PDXCon 2019. I love reconnecting to people, and I am looking forward to PDXCon 2021. Sadly, 2020 is likely not going to happen. But 2021, I think that would be a lot of fun, and I hope that I can see many of you there, and of course that I can re-meet many of the people that I already had the pleasure to meet, even though, of course, back then I didn't say anything about the YouTube channel because it barely existed. Now, with that being said, let's jump into the actual content. So let's start today with council, powerful vassals, and spouse counselors. And then the second part, we're going to have 2 topics because there's no comment review, meaning I don't spend that much time looking at comments. We're going to do characters and portraits. Let's start with the first. So question 1 3 and 4, and then this one will be handled separately, but 1, 3, and 4 belong together. Are bishops exclusively councillors now, rather than landed holders of temples, in the sense that a count would have a single bishop for his temples, and a duke for his, and a king for his? Yes and no. That is the system for your religious councillor, but ecclesiastic characters can absolutely hold land in their own right too. So you can have, say, an archbishop who is refusing to give you taxes, while the prince bishop of York, who directly holds the duchy of York and its vassals, is factioning against you. Or the church may be your biggest supporter, depends on you really. Every ruler has their own bishops. Let's jump to question 3. If half of a realm is one religion and half of the realm is the other religion, does each of those religions have their own political head, or just one for one realm? If there's one for one realm, does it collect revenues from the priests from other religions, or is it opinion based but still under the control of the main religion head? A bit of a difficult phrasing issue there, but don't worry about it too much. Well, your bishop, if you have one, is the theological counselor for your realm. They collect taxes from any bishops under them who have the same religion. For example, a Catholic bishop wouldn't collect from an Orthodox one, and from the temple holdings in your personal domain, regardless of the religion and the counties of those temple holdings. They're in charge of the land, even if they don't own it, and common folk still pay rent to a leaseholder, even if that leaseholder is of a different religion and very preachy about it. And then the last question that will kind of explain a couple of the questions that came up earlier, and then I will start giving feedback on this to clarify some stuff that I think went under the radar originally for a lot of people that, kept up with the development of CK3. Can you explain how bishops differ in CK3? If we ignore bishops who hold land in their own right, for example, I'm Bishop Mark and I directly own the county of Toulouse, so I am Bishop of Toulouse. A bishop is a variant of the co-chaplain position, which some religions have and some do not. If you have a bishop, they get all of the tax and levies from every temple holding in your direct domain, as well as a portion of taxes from your vassals' same religion bishops, if they have them. You will mainly be dealing with that bishop, and they are intended to be more troublesome, fractious individuals than single bishops in CK2 were. The archbishop title in the Dev Diary is flavor text. The exact type of bishop you get depends on your religion and tier. A count might only have a bishop, whilst the duke has an archbishop, and so on. Since it's flavor, that's all pretty subject to change, and we're still getting our unlanded bishop ranks sorted out. So this is interesting, because I think there was a very early misunderstanding of the bishop system, even for myself. When I looked at this initially, I also thought every realm just had one single bishop. Now, the way this works is actually much closer to the way it worked in CK2, except it's better. So imagine it like this. In Crusader Kings II, you have 2 levels of interaction with the church that are inside of your own realm. Of course, you have the Pope, but let's forget about the Pope for the moment. You have your court chaplain. You name that court chaplain. It might be a landed person, it might be a not landed person, it might be a person that is loyal to you, it might be a person that is not loyal to you, but I'll be honest with you, most of the time, it is very difficult to find a court chaplain that is not loyal to you. Meaning that the court chaplain doesn't actually really play a role except existing and doing his job, but the court chaplain himself isn't really involved in the day-to-day politics and intrigue of the realm. And then you have a different screen that shows you all of the bishops inside of your realm and underneath you directly, and those bishops decide whether they pay taxes to you based on how much they like you and how much they like the Pope. If they like the Pope more, they pay taxes to the Pope, otherwise they pay the taxes to you. This system is essentially the same in CK3, except they respect some things so that it would make more sense and so that the church would have a greater deal of interaction with you. So, you still have theocratic vassals, be it a count, a duke, probably not a king, let's be real, that probably doesn't exist, that would be a bit too much. Usually you don't see that in Crusader Kings for balance reason, and obviously you don't really have a prince bishop, like a king bishop, so to speak. But anyway, the point is, you still have these people that have the theocratic government type in Crusader Kings II. In Crusader Kings III, however, you have this one guy that used to just be your limp court chaplain in CK2, and all of a sudden that guy is the one that centralizes the taxes of everybody else in your realm, be it your personal domain bishoprics, or be it, your actual theocratic government vassals, or be it the people that are the vassals of your count. For example, if you're a duke, your count has a bishop, and that bishop gives a share of his money to your court chaplain. And now here's the kicker. The court chaplain determines alone now whether he pays you the money that is owed to you technically, or whether he doesn't do it. This is a huge step up to CK2, because CK2 was literally you just pressing a couple of buttons to send gifts so that these people would like you instead of the Pope, but they would have to like you individually. That was what mattered. But individually they would never gang up and say, we are the church and we stand together, and this duke, for example, this king, he kind of ticked us off, so we're not going to give him our money. This was a system that in CK2 meant that the church, internally speaking, had very, very little impact on anything that you were doing gameplay-wise and mechanics-wise and roleplay-wise. And that, of course, is a system that should be substituted or cancelled in full. I mean, you know, for example, the entire anti-pope thing in CK2, as sad as I am, and if you didn't know this, then big news coming your way right now, there will be no anti-pope system on release for CK3, but the reality of the thing for me personally is that the anti-pope system in CK2 is very, very bad. Don't tell anybody, but it's just not good, okay? It's one of those systems where you look at it and you're saying, do I want infinite money? Then I will interact with it. If I don't want infinite money, I'm not going to interact with it, because that's the only purpose. And of course you could say, yeah, but you get the choice of excommunicating people, blah, blah, blah. Yes, but it's not actually very interesting. It's not designed in a way in which your anti-pope is his own character. He's essentially your slave of enabling you to click more buttons. And that is not good game design. That is not game design suited for Crusader Kings. It was okay back in the day, I want to point that out. CK2, you know, this sort of stuff was introduced 2012 and slightly later, I think like 2014 or something. I can't remember when exactly that DLC, or rather that patch came out, but no matter how you look at it, it's not exciting. So I'm okay with the anti-pope system not making it in, and I'm very much okay with the very limp reaction that the internal church would give you, being funneled essentially into one primary person that, you know, would have otherwise been just your court chaplain slave, and he then decides whether he pays you money or doesn't. I think this is interesting. I think it also makes sense, of course, that you kind of get a chunk of the money that otherwise belongs to the count and duke court chaplains, in this case called bishops, of course, but getting a part of this money makes it a real top-down system, and that means that the church could, on the top, be actually quite heavy and quite independent, because if they don't pay you, then, I mean, that money probably gets stuck with your court chaplain, or maybe it goes to the Pope. Honestly, I wouldn't know, because they haven't really explained that, but the way CK3, just to clarify that, the way CK3 is designed is essentially just that you don't have a court chaplain that just says, yes, master, I will convert this county. Yes, master, I will do this, I will do that, I will hunt apostates. It's a court chaplain that has his own mind. And I think that is very, very good. That's good design. That is design that we should follow through on, and I'm very thankful that they're implementing that. I could see this play a big role when it comes to the papal elections, when it comes to anti-popes. But we gotta wait for that. It's not going to be in at release. There's a lot of speculation that I have in my head how this system could look and how it should look, but it's a bit, you know, there's very little point to debating that. But yeah, as a whole, I think we, you know, I at the very least, and I know many others, misunderstood how this sort of bishop system would work. I did think essentially the entire realm just had one bishop, but that's not the case. That's not how it works. Now let's do question 2. With powerful vassals now being the only ones you need to change succession laws with, how do you plan to offset that major power loss for normal vassals? Or should we care even less about them now? That's a little bit more tied into subsystems that I don't believe I'm allowed to talk about right now, but essentially there's a combination of factors that make you more likely to have fewer, more powerful vassals, as well as somewhat buffing the potential threat of factions, since multiple characters means more potential knights and men-at-arms. So essentially, what this is saying is, of course, major vassals are the only ones that now, for example, vote on succession law changes, which, I'll be honest with you, is 100% good. In CK2 you would often counter it, where of course you would only really care for the major landholders, but if you want to change your succession law, the single county count that holds the county of Graubünden and has about 200 troops says, no, you can't change that, no, not today, and you have to send him a gift, you have to make him master of the hunt, all of that nonsense, and then you will never interact with him again. It's a waste of time. And they essentially get rid of that by making more powerful vassals more powerful, and by making the powerful vassal position more desirable, meaning there is more intentions and more benefits from actually gaining that. I think that is one good thing, because it means that you don't have to interact him on that level, but on the other hand, there are two different things here. First of all, if you have more vassals, that gives you more knights, because more vassals, more characters makes it so that you have more people available that can be spread out, and I think your knights, you know, kind of level, that how many you can have as a maximum just goes up. So that's an excellent, that's a very good thing. However, if those minor vassals, even if they barely have any troops, if they rebel against you because you didn't give them, you know, for example, you didn't shove a minor vassal underneath a duke, for example, if you didn't do that, you may have gotten more knights while that vassal was still loyal, but once they become disloyal, they will give that vassal limit to the now rebellion, and that rebellion will have access to more knights, which is amazing, because as we know, and I think we need to kind of reframe this, I don't think one knight is one person. I think one knight stands for, you know, an aristocrat and their bodyguards. And one knight unit, I'm not kidding here. I've seen the statistics, and these are, of course, you know, subject to change. It might always happen, but one knight unit, from what I saw, kills about 200 to 300 levies. That is insane. That is absolutely insane. Knights are outrageously strong. And I mean, it makes sense because it means that you interacting with your vassals becomes important because they will have an actual and direct and huge impact on how a battle goes. So, in a way, minor vassals might not have an impact right away, but honestly that's a good thing because you don't need to care about them until they rise up in the ranks and become an important vassal. But in a way, militarily speaking, they will whoop your ass. So I'm very, very happy about this. If you can think of any other way that this is integrated, the other thing that I can think about is essentially, let's say I'm a minor vassal, right? And let's say you saw this very complex feudal contract structure. Actually, let me just, feudal contracts, right? Let me check this out. I can show this off. Stop clicking on the wrong things. Here we go. So they showed off today the feudal contracts and how they redesigned them. We showed this off. I showed this off previously in like 1.5 months ago, I want to say. And you can see this is highly complex, right? And the way it works is essentially that, of course, you know, the vassal is happier the more rights he has and the less his obligations are. Now imagine this. You are a vassal that is quite minor, meaning that your liege doesn't really care whether your contract is good or bad for you because you don't really have an impact on anything going on. So he gives you a very lenient, a very lax contract, and then all of a sudden you become a major vassal and boom, your liege now has a vassal with a very lax contract. Maybe you are that vassal and your liege is AI, for example, or a different player in multiplayer, but with a very lax contract, and they have a say in succession, in laws, etc., etc. I think that is a really cool dynamic that is also implemented. If you have any other, you know, dynamics, how it is a benefit for you as a minor vassal that you can be ignored, let me know. I think there already are some interesting dynamics that I would like to see in games, or rather, I would like to witness them, that I can at the moment only speculate over, but I think that would be really cool if they actually, you know, showed themselves, fundamented themselves in reality like that. I would be very interested in this actually working out the way I just described it. So yeah, maybe the offset actually exists, not just militarily, but also gameplay and mechanic-wise when it comes to the contracts, etc., etc. Now let's move on to have you considered having the spouse counselor position be extended to allow your heir to co-rule if you are widowed? That might be interesting in the future, but not at release, no promises. This is one thing that I really want in the game. I need my heir. You already have something, introduce heir to the realm, that sort of exists. You know, when you look at the entire Crusader Kings II way of life, I think included that, where you can introduce the heir, they get some events, but that's about it. I want them in the spousal position if you don't have your spouse, or maybe even side by side with your spouse, so that you get like a semi-bonus there. I think all of those things would be very interesting, but I also want to reverse it. Hear me out here. I want to turn it around. What if not you died and not your spouse died? I gave it away just now. God damn it. Not your spouse died, but you died. So now you have your spouse as a co-ruler, and you might even still have a different region. I don't think these things necessarily clash. Of course, it would be natural that, you know, your widow and your mother at this point, or, well, father, depending on the circumstances, but that they become your regent, but they don't even need to be your regent. They still should co-rule because they still would have influence at court. And I think that would be something that I need to see in the further build-up and making regencies interesting. Because while it's good to say, okay, I can introduce my heir by putting them into the co-rule position, I think we also need to turn that around and say, what if we are that heir? We are still a child, and then our mother is the co-ruler, so to speak. And not just the regent, but also the co-ruler. I think this is vital if they, in the future, want to make regencies more interesting. Regencies, without a doubt, are the weakest part next to prisons, but let's not talk about that, because prisons are prisons. But regencies are the least interesting part of Crusader Kings gameplay. And Crusader Kings is remarkably interesting in peacetime. It is the only map game that actually gets that done and stays interesting and doesn't just have you go from, okay, I'm at war, I'm doing things, and then I'm at peace. I'm just waiting until I can go to war again, I'm at war. Crusader Kings says, do things, the entire time. The entire way it says, do things, and you can do things, and there's so much to do. Except in Regencies. In Regencies it says ruler, or rather it says regent says no, and then you wait for 10 years, you come of age, and you start doing the things. We need to get rid of that. That waiting period needs to go. We're not playing cookie clickers here. We're not playing waste your time here. We are playing Crusader Kings. And I think that this and its reverse application is a thing that we should implement and that we should consider for Regencies. Now let's go to, do council actions still work by having a % chance per year event firing? Ask tasks. Amazing. Tasks like Convert County have a progress bar, so you know roughly when it will complete. They're still also associated with random events that might happen while the counselor is undertaking the task. So the way I see this, just a positive thing, because By taking out completely random events, you get rid of performance issues. You no longer have the game asking every month, is this firing, is this firing? Instead, you simply have the game say, in X months, this will fire. And the best part about it is that it is still semi-random, because you will get events that, you know, might hasten your progress, or that might slow you down, depending on whether, for example, if you're fabricating a claim, you have a setback, your library burned down, stuff like that. Sort of, you know, nonsense things, of course, but random events that, and I hit the mic there, my apologies, but random events that will still impact it and kind of make the bar just an estimate. It could be shorter, it could be longer. I think that is an excellent choice. I think this is good for a performance that is good for gameplay. I love that they're getting rid of the mean time to happen. In general, all of it sucks. Random events suck. Get them out of here. How is Vassal interaction with the Liege compared to CK2? Is there still a favor system and with laws and council power? The favor system will be replaced by the more involved hook system. There will be laws that govern your vassals and succession law. That is, of course, huge news, very positive news. I mean, we see it here as well in the feudal contract. The feudal contract's so vital to how a realm works. And as a vassal and as a liege, you can get, you know, anything that benefits you from whatever angle you're coming from, of course, but you can get those things with a hook. And I think that is great. That just makes playing intrigue so much more viable beyond, hey, this is intrigue and I either murder people or I fabricate claims. Those are the two things that I mostly do with my intrigue. Instead, you just have so much more freedom in what you do with intrigue. I think this opens up so much more play space. I'm a huge fan. And I just really highlighted this because I love the new system that evolves around hooks and that makes intrigue characters not just ruthless murderers, but also just, you know, people that are good working with a code. Now let's move on with characters and portraits. You can see here we're not doing any comments, meaning that I can do 2 topics in this video. Leave your comments, by the way, underneath these sections so that I can, you know, just tell, hey, this is interesting, I want to have this in the comment review, whether we do it live or not. Let's just still do that comment review. I'm very excited to get all the input. You know, I would just say it, all of the input that you all are delivering to me by telling me about your opinions, you're giving me angles that I would have never seen, that I would have never taken, and I really appreciate that. I think that adds a lot here, because otherwise I would have just had my own, you know, kind of tunnel vision sort of thing, but then I get all this input about how you guys think about religion, etc., etc., and how it should be implemented in the game, and I really appreciate that. So please do keep it up. It's always interesting to bring that to light and debate it. We'll be able to customize character outfits, haircuts, and stuff. There will exist a barbershop where you can customize hair, facial hair, clothes, and to a limited degree hair color. No outlandish colors though. Now, thinking back, I don't think there are historical cultures that have outlandish hair colors. I know that, for example, in Game of Thrones, a certain group of people that I honestly forgot, but don't tell anybody. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, then I am an expert in it. I'm not really. Honestly, it's not a wonder that I haven't played the Game of Thrones mod in ages on this channel. I just don't know enough about the lore. But I know that that stuff is there, but I also know that you can easily, we've seen the barbershop interface, you can easily mod, you know, outlandish colors in. I think that's perfectly fine. I love that you have this. All that I will say is that I hope that effectively when you have these DLC, and let's be really, the minor content packs will probably mostly be visuals, because if you don't buy the visuals, you don't miss out on anything, meaning there will be less of an, you know, uproar of people saying, hey, I'm missing out on the minor DLCs here, so I'm not even going to jump into this game. There's no point in saying that when, you know, it's stuff like the Abbasids and the iterate clothes, they look amazing, don't get me wrong here, but they're not mandatory to actually play the game, like, for example, Way of Life or Conclave are. So what I want to say is, all I'm hoping for is that in CK3, if I buy a visual DLC, be it Abbasids, be it HRE, for example, be it whatever else, that people that I host DLC, that I host multiplayer games for also see it. So far in Crusader Kings II, if you host with all DLC, which I do when you host multiplayer games, other people that don't have those DLC will not see it, and I think that's a mistake, because my amazing clothes, I mean, why do I have them if the other players don't even see how amazing I look as I dab on them? That's a bit of a waste of effort. So, you know, I hope that this entire thing, the barbershop and what I can do with my character, will be something that will also be seen by other people that don't own the DLC, but they can't select it in the barbershop. I think that is really what I'm looking forward to. What is the should be naked trigger thing that showed up a few weeks ago supposed to be? For its primary uses for certain religious sects. I can clear this up. This is mostly either for religions, or rather for faiths, I should say, that you made custom. I think there's like some Christians that also do it, but mostly it is an Indian thing, so an Indian religion thing. And I will address this only because I saw a couple of people that were like naked people in my game, and then I saw people censorship in my game, hear me out here, okay? I saw this debate and I never addressed it when it happened like a month or two ago at this point. I saw the debate because there were, magazines reporting that, people were naked in Crusader Kings 3. And that was, of course, true in their build. That was the default in their build. But it was then soon after confirmed that the standard option of Crusader Kings 3, when you look at a naked character that isn't wearing clothes, are... Is it called laurels? The stuff that Adam and Eve were using? I don't know the English term for that plant, but don't worry about it. You know what I mean. And again, there were two fronts that were like, oh no, naked people, and then, oh no, censorship. You're censoring naked people with the leaves? Fig leaves, that's the word. So the thing about this is, it's tactful and appropriate for the time to have fig leaves. I think it's fig leaves, right? Because it's just like, it just fits. You look and you're like, oh yeah, this is a medieval game. I get it. Of course, not everybody is in this Abrahamic bubble, where people are covering themselves like that in their art and whatnot. I mean, it's mostly Christians at the end of the day. But I think it is still fitting, and it's fitting enough, and it's not censorship, because you could disable it. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's completely tactful and tasteful. I just want to address that because it was like such an overblown thing, but better address it than not address it. How easily will one gain or lose personality traits? If these traits are now so definitive of the characters, I hope a random event will not see us change personality drastically. If you didn't know this, if you had 5 traits and you gained a 6th one after a period of time, you would get a random event that would just say, I no longer have this trait. I'm no longer just. I'm no longer cruel. I'm no longer zealous. Those events were annoying because they would change your entire personality with a 180 and just have you be a different person. And that is no longer the case in Crusader Kings 3. We know a whole bunch about it, for example, and they say it here, and I can elaborate on that. It is very hard to change your personality, and random events will never do it, which is excellent. There are a few ways you can alter your personality slowly over time, and depending on how you can play your character, stress might also have an impact. We saw that last 3 weeks ago, I want to say, with a stress dev diary, not last week, 3 weeks ago or something. We saw that if you are imprisoned, you might have a choice, and that's important, it's a choice, to change one of your traits for something else. For example, I think in that case it was like diligent would have been gone for vengeful, because you got imprisoned, you were mad, I think they were torturing that lady, and you just went, I'm no longer diligent, I'm just only working hard to take revenge. And that's all I do. That's my life, my point in life. And I think that is good. That is a really good way where the game says, hey, we saw it stresses you out that you are in prison, and we want to give you something that reacts to this. It doesn't randomly come in and say, I'm vengeful now. It just says, hey, do you want to take revenge against the captor? And your answer as a player can be, nah, I like being diligent. It's fine. Or you can say, absolutely, get diligent out of here, my life's focus is vengeance. I think this is way better than anything that we had in CK2, and I'm very happy about it. Honestly, the stress system is one of the best things. It does still remind me of Blades in the Dark, and that is not a negative thing, that's a positive thing. Of course, having a stress system that works in layered approaches that becomes more intense as you go, amazing. Seriously, it's great. Check out Blades in the Dark, by the way. If you like tabletop, check it out. It's an amazing system as well. This is great. The entire stress system, the way you can essentially force your character to reinvent themselves because you make them deal with stress that runs counter their traits, and then you can change that trait. I think that is perfect. That is immersive, but also allows for min-maxing and mechanic-driven gameplay. Will the adult age remain at 16 as in CK2, or will it be different and more dynamic to reflect the values of the Middle Ages? I mean, visually, of course, the adult age is the same, but character portraits now age gradually rather than at hard boundaries. That is excellent. No more giant beards at 16. And I think HIP in CK2 does it essentially that you grow up at 14. You can't have children, but you can get married. And then wherever you get married to gets to educate you, meaning you can kind of plan a bit better, like how exactly your future spouse will be growing up, that sort of stuff. But I think the age limit of 16 is perfectly fine. It's somewhat arbitrary. I mean, some rulers started ruling earlier, some rulers starting later, some people got married earlier and some got married later. All that sort of stuff, of course, was going on, but 16, you gotta have a cutoff point at some point. 16 is tactful, it's perfectly fine as well. 16 is still incredibly young. If you're 16, enjoy your life. I hope that you are having a great time and will become a great adult. Value and treasure the time that you have, of course, because you're not forced to rule at 16, which is good for you, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, the way I see it, 16 is perfectly reasonable as the cut-off age where you take over the businesses from your regent and all that sort of stuff. I think that's perfectly fine. In gameplay terms, I don't think you want to have it earlier or later, because then you would just kind of scramble everything in terms of education as well. As homosexuality will be part of the development, is there a possibility of adoption of children? Adoption is not planned for release. So adoption is something that modders implemented very quickly into CK2, if I remember this correctly. I just think it's a balancing issue. You know, if you have adoption and you have a guarantee that it's a fairly decent child, and otherwise you're just gonna kill it. But if you have adoption, you're just never gonna marry. And that is something that you can't really incentivize. But if you make it so that the child either has no legitimacy or is always awful, then adoption is a purely punishing mechanic. And it shouldn't be that. It should be something that is challenging but not exclusively punishing. And implementing that, making it balanced, I think that is very, very difficult. So I think it's the smart, it's the right choice of the developers to say we're not implementing it until we find a rewarding but challenging way of implementing it. So I think this is perfectly fine. Can my characters lead troops in Jerusalem and in a single moment teleport to England for a game of charades, and then again in a moment teleport back to Jerusalem? Most events require you to pass an isn't available for events trigger, which will fail if you are actively leading an army. Now this is good, and there will be, I'm going to announce this right here, there will be a hot take issue, a hot take video about the issue of warfare in Crusader Kings and map games in general, and it will probably make you think, when you wrote this, were you drunk? Are you out of your mind? I hope that you can consider that video once it comes out for what it is worth in its own right, on its own merit. But I will make a video that essentially addresses this issue in particular. How do characters interact with warfare? Because warfare is somewhat detached from the character-driven gameplay of Crusader Kings. Not entirely, of course, but somewhat. And I think this plays into this as well. The issue that I see with this trigger is that sometimes it might just not work, and sometimes you might not want it to work. If you have an urgent quest and you go all of a sudden, you know, lead an army because of course somebody declared war against you, then that quest will be postponed maybe indefinitely, and I don't think that's adequate. You know, when your wife is getting stabbed in the room next door and you all of a sudden lead an army and this quest gets postponed and you will try to save your wife, you know, in 100 years because that's when you return from that entire endeavor, that of course makes no sense. You will always have some of these events. I hope that it's better in CK3 than it was in CK2, where all of a sudden, you know, you teleport like back and forth all the time, but I don't think that you can avoid it properly. I just don't think that's a thing with the war, with the way the war system works. Will members of your family leave your court and ask and seek out titles on their own? Yes, if they're not close in line to inherit something, they can become wanderers. Let me just switch to a different interface here because I want to take a look at something. I have a screenshot for this, and I can do this now because I have control over the interface much better than I ever previously had. Here we go. Boom, check this out. My last chance. Dobroslava has decided that her time in Holmgarder has come to an end. The servants have packed her chests and she has said her farewells. With Dobroslava goes her claim on the chiefdom of Orsha. If I want to press it and make her my vassal, this is my last chance to make her stay. And then you get a choice: give me 1 year and I will press your claim, or may your journey be swift and safe. I really like this. I highly endorse this. This is a very active system. This is a system where you're essentially looking at Dobroslava and say, you know what? I can either interact with you, and if I assume, you know, if I say, hey, give me 1 year, and then I fail to press the claim, that she will be mad at me, and of course that won't bode well for the future. But I like the idea that even family members of our own will actually leave our court instead of just lingering around in our court the entire time. The entire system of wanderers, and we're going to get to that in the next FAQ analysis, is amazing because it's good for performance, and it is good for roleplay reasons, because somebody will come to you that already has their own story instead of being an entirely newly generated character. So even family members being able to leave, I love it. I endorse this. I need this to last even longer and be even better. Now, if you have any suggestions, for example, why can't I in this event, right? This is something that I would be open to, that I would love. Why can't I say, hey, take some money and make it 2 years instead of 1 year, you know, that sort of stuff. I think that should be an option. Making them comfortable, maybe settling them down, giving them a small share of income, that sort of stuff, I think that would be fair. I would love to see that, especially with rival claimants, to keep them at your court, you know, you bribe them essentially. I would love to see that. That's a very hot topic for me. Let me know what you think, how we should be able to interact with the Wanderers. That's just one of my many takes. I think there's many approaches that we can take that aren't, you know, too powerful or too weak. because you always need to consider, of course, balancing as well. When you have a rival claimant, you need that rival claimant in a different court to make gameplay interesting. So like, if you can just lull them in and they will never leave your court, then what's the point of having a rival claimant that could go Wanderer in any way if you just can give them, 10 cents a week and they'll be happy. Will there be any way to disown children without resorting to murder? I just highlighted this. This was, of course, a long-known thing. Yes, there's a dynasty head interaction to disinherit members of your dynasty. I just highlighted this because I think it's an interesting thing, I'll be honest with you. I like that we have so much more interaction with our dynasty that just goes lateral and top-down instead of just, us being like, hey, our immediate relatives is essentially what we can impact, right? That is no longer the case. We can now impact everyone if we are powerful enough. I'm a huge fan, I hope so are you, but if you're not, or if you are, let me know in the comments, tell me about these things. I'm very interested in your takes now and of course forever. For the moment, of course, I am done with this video. Let me just switch over here. I'm done with this video and I want to thank the members of the channel that are making videos such as this one possible, namely the Barons Stefan the Pelted, Achilles, Know-How, Charlie, Eterna, Falling Phoenix, Rex Romanorum, Jacob the Muss, Yelago, Dan, Florian, MFA, Mitchell, Aaron, Stefan and Snywolf, and then of course also the Counts, Lachlan, Kazen, Wombit, Thomas and Shifty, and last but not least, the absolutely gorgeous Dukes, Eric, Kiriana, Goodfield, Nathan, Jack, Kenneth and Lexo. Thank you all for supporting the channel and I will see you later, alligator. Go and do the QA. I swear to God, if you don't ask good questions, I will ban all of you. Okay, later.